Welcome to the Undiscovered History of China. This time, we will introduce Chinese people's contribution to the collapsing society. We will briefly introduce the self-strengthening movement, or the Westernization Movement, and the 100 Days Reform. The Westernization Movement was started by a group of officials in the court, such as Li Hongzhang, Zuo Zongtang, and Zheng Guofan. Although they could be considered as the first group of people starting to save the collapsing dynasty, they also had many limitations, caused by the closed-door policy started a period earlier and their arrogance. Li Hongzhang once said that the reform in China is not really an urgent event, as the Qing dynasty only needed to learn from Western technology instead of the political structure and critical thinking. Some modern enterprises were developed during this period. They were mainly stimulated by foreign business and Westernists introduced both. Domestic landowners and businessmen developed many private enterprises, which were distributed in southeastern China along the sea. Officials such as Li Hongzhang and Zhang Zhidong also developed many state-owned companies such as Jiangnan General Manufacturing Bureau and Anqing Nail Ordnance Station. From another standpoint, the Westernization movement can be separated into two stages, the self-strengthening stage and the wealth-seeking stage. In the first period, the military industry was promoted, and in the latter stage, modern enterprises that could create wealth were promoted. The Qing dynasty also sent students to study abroad in the Westernization movement between 1872 and 1875. Students who were sent there were mainly from families under the poverty line. Only a few of them completed their study. During the daytime, they accepted the education of liberal arts, being instilled by liberty, democracy, and equity. Ironically, in the evening they were still going to kowtow to the emperor. In the context of conflicts between ideologies, the dynasty decided to call those students back. But the group of students who were sent in the first term included extraordinary scientists such as Zhen Tianyou, the first person to create railroads in China, and Tang Shaoli, the first premier of the State Council of the Republic of China established in 1912. However, in the end, the Westernization movement was still a failure due to official limitations and corruption. Also, the Westernist power was not enough to bring a complete reform, as there were still many old-fashioned forces objecting to the reform. About 20 years after the Westernization movement, some intellectuals started the 100 Days Reform, or the reform in the year of Wuxu. Before they officially started the movement, there were many ideas about reform. Liang Qichao, in one of his articles, suggested that the Qing dynasty should learn from Western political system and culture. There were 4 ways to achieve it. The country can change by itself, like Russia and Japan. Secondly, losing some of the sovereignty so to change, like Turkey. Thirdly, Western countries could help to change, like what had happened in India. Fourthly, the country was divided up, so the country would naturally be changed. Tan Sitong, another intellectual, would like to sacrifice in exchange for people's critical thinking. Yan Fu supported Darwin's theory of evolution. The reform was started after the Gongche Shangshu movement. Gongche in ancient Chinese means readers or scholars. Shangshu means sending messages to the emperor. The movement was caused by the Treaty of Shimonoseki, the consequence of the Sino-Japanese War, which we will introduce next time. The Gongche Shangshu movement urged for the refusal of signing the treaty, change of the capital to Xi'an, reform in the political system, and the training of soldiers. The empire had no idea about the movement because of the court's corruption. Empires could not see normal people's messages. In 1897, Kang Youwei had sent messages to the emperor, telling him the existence of rebels and invasive forces, and the country was in danger, so the emperor should make plans ahead. In January of the second year, the emperor accepted Kang Youwei's idea of reform after he sent messages to the emperor the 6th time. In June, the Guangxu emperor decided to start the reform. Some people also consider the emperor's declaration of beginning the reform as the starting point of the 100 Days Reform. Here are some important changes. Normal people could send messages to the emperor directly. Establish the Bureau of Mines and Railroads and the Bureau of Agriculture, Industry, and Commerce. Abandon the 8-legged essay, a style of essay in imperial examinations, and establish the Imperial University of Peking, the predecessor of Peking University. Created the new armies, for which soldiers used different methods to practice. One of the reasons that the Guangxu emperor supported the reform was that he wanted his power back from the Empress Dowager Cixi. The Guangxu Emperor even couldn't choose a wife by himself, and he was forced by Empress Dowager Cixi to choose someone he didn't like. So most powers were controlled by Empress Dowager Cixi. In the end, the Qing army sieged the Forbidden City, and the emperor sent secret messages to the Crusaders, but they had no way to save the emperor. The Guangxu Emperor was caught and put in jail in Zhongnanhai, a place near the Forbidden City. Empress Dowager Cixi commanded the action. Liang Qichao and Tang Youwei ran away to foreign countries. Tan Sitong and 5 other crusaders refused to leave, and in the end, they were executed. Ironically, Chinese people's ideas were not changed. They were still numb. Some people still used steamed bread to soak those crusaders' blood after they were executed. The superstition was still not changed. The 100 Days reform was beneficial for the country's development, but the main reason for its failure was that the reform did not have strong supporters. Most people who supported the reform were intellectuals and some landowners, the minority groups of the society. Next time we will introduce the Sino-Japanese War and the Bata Rebellion. Thanks for watching.